Tesla had weathered storms before, but nothing like this. This wasn't a rogue tweet or a product delay. This was a full-blown economic attack, triggered by Donald Trump's latest wave of tariffs. Canada retaliated with ruthless precision, wiping $135 billion off Tesla's valuation in a matter of days. From $770 billion to just $635 billion, gone. Not because of poor performance, but because of a political war spiraling out of control. Canadian premiers united. Consumer loyalty was weaponized, and Tesla, it became the face of American arrogance. Investors panicked, markets buckled. But here's the twist. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. So how far will Canada go? What happens when the world's most iconic EV brand finds itself cornered? And what does it mean for you? Stick with us, because what comes next changes everything. Ottawa declares war on Tesla. Canada's response wasn't impulsive. It was calculated. After watching Tesla's valuation take a staggering hit in the financial markets, Ottawa saw an opportunity, and it took it. The country's left-leaning New Democratic Party introduced a slate of targeted policies that didn't just level the playing field for Canadian electric vehicle makers. They tilted the battlefield against Tesla. First came the incentives. Canadian officials proposed a sweeping new rebate, $10,000, for electric vehicles manufactured within Canada's borders. It wasn't a blanket benefit. It was razor-focused to exclude Tesla, which, despite its popularity in Canada, was still viewed as a foreign automaker. The message was unmistakable: buy local, punish the aggressor. Then came the penalty. New Democratic Party lawmakers floated the idea of a 100% import tariff on Tesla vehicles entering the Canadian market. Not on all American cars. Not even on all electric vehicles, just on Tesla. The plan was bold and controversial, but its intent was political, not just economic. It framed Tesla as the symbol of Donald Trump's protectionist aggression, and in doing so, made the company a vessel for Canadian outrage. Political leaders began to echo this framing publicly. In interviews, press conferences, and legislative debates, Tesla was named explicitly. Not Ford, not General Motors, just Tesla. The justification was simple. Tesla, they argued, had benefited disproportionately from American subsidies and global goodwill, while remaining silent on Trump's economic attacks. In their view, Musk's proximity to the administration, whether real or imagined, made Tesla complicit. The policy impact was swift. Orders began to freeze. Dealerships braced for cancellations. Potential buyers hesitated, unsure if their new Tesla would be subject to massive fees or stripped of existing rebates. Confusion metastasized into hesitation, and hesitation evolved into paralysis. Tesla's carefully built Canadian pipeline, built on years of marketing, influencer campaigns, and green tech positioning, was in freefall. Elon Musk, unusually silent, did not immediately respond. In previous conflicts, he might have fired back with a pointed tweet or off-the-cuff comment. But this time, the silence was deafening. Whether strategic or uncertain, his lack of reaction only fueled speculation that Tesla was not only unprepared, but potentially cornered. And just as the political knives were drawn, something unexpected began happening on the streets and in the suburbs. But before we get into that, subscribe. Canadian consumers slammed the door. It didn't take long for Canadian consumers to get the message. Once seen as a symbol of progress, sustainability, and luxury, Tesla's brand image in Canada deteriorated seemingly overnight. The backlash wasn't just political, it was cultural. Canadians weren't just reacting to tariffs, they were reacting to the perception that Tesla was no longer aligned with their values. Protests outside Tesla showrooms began as isolated events, then they spread. In Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, citizens showed up with signs reading "Tax Tesla Now" and "Build Here or Go Home." Some were environmentalists who felt betrayed by the company's silence. Others were nationalists who wanted to support local EV manufacturers. But many were simply consumers, angry that their vehicle of choice had become a pawn in a broader political war. Online petitions surged. One, demanding the Canadian government revoke Elon Musk's Canadian citizenship, gathered tens of thousands of signatures in days. Though Musk had long since moved on from his Canadian roots, the symbolic repudiation hit hard. It wasn't just about him, it was about what Tesla now represented. Sales staff at Tesla dealerships reported cancellations climbing rapidly. Potential buyers were holding off. Others said they would switch to brands eligible for the newly proposed rebates, some of which offered similar features at far more competitive prices. The Tesla name, once aspirational, was now politically radioactive in parts of the country. What made the consumer backlash so damaging was that it wasn't orchestrated from the top. It was organic, word of mouth, social media. news coverage. The public had turned, and there was little Tesla could do to stop it. Even if the policies were reversed tomorrow, the damage to public perception had already taken root. And just when it looked like Tesla would be forced to mount a comeback campaign to restore its brand, something unexpected happened. Canada's electric vehicle industry saw an opportunity, and it seized it with both hands. Canada's EV startups rise from Tesla's ashes. While Tesla scrambled to regain control, Canadian electric vehicle startups were already making their move. For years, these domestic companies had existed in the shadow of Tesla's overwhelming presence. But with Ottawa's full political and financial backing, they surged into the spotlight. Government funding was rapidly expanded. Provincial leaders announced multi-million-dollar grants to help startups scale production, improve battery technology, and expand hiring. And with Tesla now excluded from the national rebate program, these startups had a competitive advantage they had never enjoyed before. Companies like Revolt and Northern Motion, once small players, began opening new factories and announcing hiring sprees. Some even signed new supply agreements with local governments. Canadian banks, once hesitant to fund large EV ventures, now eagerly extended lines of credit, seeing political favor and public enthusiasm aligning in a way that made risk palatable. Local automakers weren't just filling a void, they were reshaping the entire EV conversation in Canada. What once felt like a monopoly now became a competitive landscape. Consumers had alternatives, investors had new targets, and Tesla was being squeezed out not by lack of innovation, but by the very nationalism that had fueled its rise across the border. But this was only the beginning, because what started as a Canadian pushback was about to evolve into a full-blown geopolitical and economic nightmare for Tesla, and it wouldn't stop at the Canadian border. Showrooms go dark across Canada. Empty parking lots, silent sales rooms. Tesla's Canadian dealers were blindsided. In the wake of escalating trade tensions between Canada and the United States, dealerships once bustling with eager customers had transformed into ghost towns. The very showrooms that proudly showcased Tesla's cutting-edge electric vehicles now stood deserted, a striking and surreal transformation that even veteran salespeople found difficult to believe. In the city of Calgary, Alberta, dealers arrived on a chilly Monday morning to find inboxes filled with a wave of canceled orders. Sarah Wilkins, who had proudly sold Tesla vehicles for nearly 5 years, stood bewildered by a sprawling stack of cancellations she had to process personally. Just days before, she had celebrated landing a significant fleet deal, 27 Model Y vehicles, only to see it vanish overnight. Each cancellation referenced new tariffs, regulatory uncertainty, or sudden price increases directly related to Ottawa's dramatic new trade measures. The optimism of yesterday evaporated, replaced by a sense of helplessness. Meanwhile, in the Tesla showroom at Eaton Centre in Toronto, sales consultant Mark Thompson could hardly believe the sight before him. On an ordinary weekend, the showroom would have been crowded, visitors lining up eagerly for test drives. Now, the polished concrete floors echoed eerily with his own footsteps. Mark had already watched 2 colleagues lose their jobs the previous afternoon, as dealership management hurriedly responded to the crisis by cutting staff. Even as Tesla headquarters tried to reassure its Canadian workforce, the ground reality told a different story. Layoffs weren't looming, they had arrived. The dealership at Robson Street in Vancouver faced an equally troubling scenario. At a morning meeting, hastily called in the manager's glass-walled office, 27 employees listened grimly as their boss outlined necessary cutbacks, reduced hours, curtailed commissions, and possible layoffs. Maria Sanchez, a young salesperson who had moved to Vancouver specifically to work for Tesla, quietly realized that her future had turned uncertain overnight. In conversations later that day, colleagues confided anxieties and fears that stretched far beyond their immediate employment. For them, Tesla wasn't merely a brand. It was their livelihood, their identity. And now they were collateral damage in a trade war none had seen coming. Across Canada, dealership groups found themselves forced into immediate crisis management mode. Canadian provincial authorities had effectively pulled away incentives and benefits for Tesla buyers overnight, and aggressive tariffs imposed by Ottawa made the cars prohibitively expensive. Dealers desperate for solutions attempted rapid-fire marketing promotions, offering discounts that ate heavily into already razor-thin profit margins. Yet even deep price cuts failed to reignite consumer interest. Buyers who had once passionately supported Tesla's innovative vision now stayed home, wary of the volatile market and hostile political climate. In Montreal, Tesla dealership owner Philippe Marchand saw a 50% plunge in showroom traffic over a single weekend. Determined to confront the reality head-on, he personally called former loyal clients, pleading with them to reconsider their cancellations. However, the reasons for abandoning Tesla weren't personal, they were economic and political. Customers expressed frustration at the sudden spike in vehicle prices due to tariffs. They had no quarrel with Felipe or Tesla itself, but rather with circumstances far beyond their control. The impact reverberated through smaller markets too. A Tesla satellite dealership in Halifax had quietly grown successful in recent years, powered by eager local buyers committed to transitioning to electric mobility. Yet by midweek, even this smaller outlet reported dramatic cancellation. Community members who had embraced Tesla as an environmental solution now found themselves priced out. The Atlantic province's new regulatory measure specifically excluded Tesla from crucial purchase rebate, effectively pushing prospective buyers toward more affordable Canadian-made electric vehicle alternatives. This is a disaster for Tesla. The company was not simply suffering in abstract market terms anymore. You could see it at dealerships, on online forums, and basically everywhere. Tesla was experiencing a very human crisis. And even as Tesla executives scrambled to reassure their network of dealers and partners, the cold economic reality remained starkly evident. Dealerships once filled with promise and pride now stood as stark symbols of a devastating corporate crisis, triggered by distant political battles fought in conference rooms in Ottawa and Washington, D.C. Dealers who built their careers championing Elon Musk's groundbreaking brand were now left uncertain about their futures, victimized by forces they neither provoked nor controlled. While Tesla struggled to reopen dealership, an even darker cloud gathered. Supply chains shattered overnight. One tariff too many sent Tesla's factories spiraling into chaos. Tesla's sophisticated manufacturing network had long relied heavily on the smooth flow of components across the Canadian border. Critical materials ranging from battery-grade nickel and cobalt from Ontario's mines to advanced electronics and automotive modules produced in Quebec. But with Canada's aggressive new retaliatory tariffs, these lifelines snapped abruptly, causing immediate and profound disruptions in production lines thousands of kilometers away. In Nevada, managers at the Gigafactory watched helplessly as vital battery components, scheduled to arrive daily from Canadian suppliers, became stranded at border crossings in Windsor and Detroit. Trucks sat idling, loaded with multi-million-dollar shipments that overnight faced heavy tariff burdens and extensive new paperwork requirements. Mike Barrett, logistics supervisor at the Gigafactory, described the shock when realizing that parts urgently needed to maintain steady battery production would now cost nearly 30% more and face severe delays. In Fremont, California, assembly line workers accustomed to just-in-time deliveries of crucial parts from Ontario manufacturers arrived to find assembly stations silent. Line supervisor Emily Carter explained how workers who had tirelessly pursued Tesla's demanding production targets now found themselves stalled indefinitely, simply due to the unexpected lack of essential materials. She spoke of colleagues sitting idle, unsure of what tomorrow might bring, as factory managers struggled frantically to source alternative supplies from domestic or overseas providers, supplies that might take weeks or months to procure. The impacts cascaded rapidly, reaching Tesla's smaller component providers in Ontario's automotive hubs. A critical component manufacturer in Oakville, run by Robert Chen, saw its long-standing Tesla contract evaporate overnight, facing impossible tariff barriers and lost orders. Chen described the devastating meeting where he informed his workforce they might soon be out of jobs. His firm was one of dozens of Canadian businesses facing imminent closure due directly to supply chain chaos triggered by the political dispute. Chen summarized the feeling succinctly: decades of trust destroyed in a single political decision. At Tesla's Texas Gigafactory near Austin, confusion reigned. Managers urgently contacted American suppliers, hoping to bypass Canada's tariffs, but with Canada's integrated supply chain deeply entrenched within North American automotive manufacturing, immediate replacement proved nearly impossible. A Texas line manager admitted privately, "We relied too heavily on seamless borders. Now we pay the price." As uncertainty grew, Tesla executives tried to soothe anxious investors on emergency calls, promising rapid solutions, but industry insiders privately warned that re-establishing supply chains disrupted so suddenly would take months, if not years. significantly damaging Tesla's short-term production targets. Analysts quietly circulated alarming internal memos, highlighting the potential for further erosion of market share as Tesla struggled to meet existing customer orders worldwide. And as Tesla battled chaos in factories, workers began taking matters into their own hands. Labor's furious response. Canadian unions smelled blood, and Tesla was squarely in their sights. Faced with layoffs, unstable hours, and dwindling confidence in Tesla's Canadian operations, employees across Ontario and Quebec responded aggressively. At Tesla's Toronto area component facility, union representative Daniel Tremblay led workers in a strike, declaring publicly, "We built Tesla's dream. Now we fight for our future." Tremblay described the strike as necessary not only to secure workers' livelihoods, but also to force Tesla and Ottawa into urgent negotiations to end the crippling tariffs. Across Ontario, additional factory closures loomed as unions took a harder stance. In Windsor, a protest organized by local union chapters brought production at a critical battery parts supplier to a halt. Union leader Sarah Foster spoke emotionally about workers' frustrations, blaming political leaders and corporate executives alike for disregarding employee well-being in their trade war. Labor protests rapidly spread to Quebec, where Tesla's partner companies faced simultaneous strikes and picketing. Workers demanded Tesla executives meet them directly to address grievances and negotiate guarantees of job security. Tesla's already precarious supply chains further collapsed under coordinated labor actions, adding yet another layer of instability to the company's Canadian presence. Labor's anger was just the spark. Tesla's problems were about to ignite across Wall Street. Tesla's financial lifeline severed. Banks had loved Tesla until Canada turned it toxic overnight. For years, Tesla was Wall Street's golden child. Venture capitalists praised its disruptive potential. Hedge funds poured in billions. Even legacy banks, once skeptical, opened their vaults to Elon Musk's empire, enticed by the promise of innovation and dominance in the electric vehicle market. But when Canada retaliated with laser-focused precision, that love affair ended in an instant. Canadian tariffs and consumer protection laws didn't just threaten Tesla's sales, they detonated its financial credibility. The impact wasn't emotional, it was institutional. Banks and financial firms operate on confidence, and Canada's response shattered it. Within hours, Tesla's bond yields widened, an early warning sign of investor fear. Hedge funds like Blackstone Partners and Liberty Ridge began offloading shares at a loss, citing excessive geopolitical volatility. Pension funds trimmed their exposure. Mutual funds rebalanced away from Tesla. Even longtime bulls on Tesla began publishing cautious outlooks, stating that Canada's escalation posed material long-term threats to Tesla's cross-border profitability. Veteran Wall Street analyst Emma Green didn't mince words. Tesla went from visionary to radioactive in 24 hours. At JP Morgan, internal memos leaked, suggesting the bank would pause all future EV-related loan packages tied to North American operations until trade volatility settles. Goldman Sachs quietly downgraded Tesla's outlook for the first time in over 5 years, pointing directly to Canada's retaliatory strategy as the trigger. Tesla's valuation, already spiraling, lost another $25 billion in a single day. But the damage went beyond money. It fractured the illusion of invincibility that had shielded Tesla for over a decade. Suddenly, Tesla wasn't just an automaker, it was a political liability. The very brand that symbolized American innovation had become the target of international economic warfare. With capital evaporating and investor loyalty vanishing, the company faced an impossible scenario: rising production costs, collapsing stock value, and frozen financial backing. And that's when President Trump stepped in. In an emergency White House meeting, sources revealed, Trump demanded immediate financial protections for Tesla. He reportedly told advisors, "We can't let our best company bleed out on my watch." But behind closed doors, officials feared the fallout was already too far gone. Tesla didn't just lose its investors, it lost its shield. And that loss, it triggered the White House's most desperate economic gamble yet. Now you might be asking yourself what that is, but before I answer that, have you subscribed to the channel? It only takes a few seconds. Trump's chaotic rescue plan. Trump vowed to save Tesla, but his solution triggered even more chaos. Faced with Tesla's plummeting stock and the fierce economic backlash from Canada's aggressive tariffs, President Donald Trump responded by unveiling an unprecedented electric vehicle incentive package aimed squarely at stabilizing the iconic American company. His administration promised enormous subsidies, dramatically increasing federal tax credits up to $15,000 per vehicle manufactured domestically, specifically targeting electric vehicle production lines like those at Tesla's Nevada Gigafactory. At first glance, it appeared to be a lifeline for Tesla, a bold maneuver to counter Canada's punitive tariffs and keep Tesla factories humming. Yet the policy quickly unraveled into bureaucratic turmoil. Conflicting messages emerged from different agencies, with the Department of Commerce openly clashing with the Environmental Protection Agency. Internal leaks from Washington revealed that Trump's closest economic advisors were sharply divided, unable to agree on how exactly to implement these incentives without triggering retaliatory measures from Canada or Europe. Chaos seeped into policy meetings, where senior officials reportedly argued loudly, pointing fingers at one another over hastily drafted proposals that many felt were rushed or incomplete. The confusion spilled into the public sphere. Financial analysts on Wall Street described Trump's incentives as both desperate and misguided, noting how uncertain eligibility requirements and ambiguous funding mechanisms triggered panic among investors rather than reassurance. Tesla's stock, momentarily buoyed by Trump's initial announcement, soon resumed its downward trajectory. Leaked memos from inside Tesla suggested Elon Musk himself was deeply skeptical, privately questioning the administration's motives and fearing further political entanglement. As government confusion deepened, Trump's critics seized upon the chaos, lambasting the administration for creating uncertainty and inadvertently harming Tesla further. Even Republican senators expressed frustration, accusing Trump of reckless economic policymaking. Despite frantic efforts from Trump's inner circle to clarify the incentives, nothing could stem the tide of growing skepticism and financial anxiety gripping American markets. Yet even Trump's intervention couldn't stop the unfolding disaster. American auto workers rebel. When Tesla sneezed, American auto factories caught pneumonia. The chaos unleashed by Trump's flawed rescue plan echoed directly through assembly lines across the United States, where workers suddenly found themselves facing an uncertain future. As Tesla's sales collapsed in Canada, supply chains froze, orders slowed dramatically, and auto workers began feeling the pinch almost immediately. Factories dependent on parts shared between traditional automakers and Tesla were forced to reduce shifts, lay off temporary workers, and even contemplate shutting down entire production lines. Workers at plants in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana quickly organized, rallying under the banner of the United Automobile Workers Union. Union leaders, angry over sudden job insecurity, openly criticized Trump's handling of the trade war with Canada, declaring that his chaotic policymaking was directly harming American jobs. At the General Motors facility in Lansing, Michigan, workers staged a spontaneous strike demanding stability, clear governmental support, and fair labor protections amidst what they called reckless political gambling. Stories emerged of workers forced into sudden unemployment, unable to pay mortgages or healthcare bills, as factories slashed production. The ripple effect was immediate, spreading panic through communities dependent on manufacturing jobs. Local news in Ohio featured heartbreaking interviews with workers who had dedicated decades of their lives to auto manufacturing, only to watch their jobs vanish overnight. Union demonstrations erupted not just at Tesla-related facilities, but also at assembly plants producing traditional internal combustion engines, which faced collateral damage from the collapsing market conditions. UAW President Michael Harris publicly stated, "Our workers refuse to pay the price for political recklessness. We demand action and accountability from Washington now." This labor revolt was a symptom. America's economy itself was now under threat. Economic dominoes fall in Detroit. Tesla's Canadian collapse triggered an unprecedented economic disaster across Motor City. Detroit, historically tied to the heartbeat of American automobile production, found itself staring down a crisis of staggering proportions. Within weeks, unemployment rates soared across southeastern Michigan, surpassing levels last seen during the recession of 2008. Local businesses, from diners to suppliers, began shuttering their doors at alarming rates, unable to withstand the sudden evaporation of automotive revenue. Small manufacturers who supplied specialized components to Tesla and other automakers declared bankruptcy, sending further shockwaves through local economies. The famous Detroit auto supplier corridor, once bustling with economic vitality, became a ghost town as business owners struggled desperately to survive amid rapidly dwindling orders. Families dependent on these industries scrambled for alternatives, but few options existed in a market thrown into turmoil by unpredictable tariffs and shifting governmental policies. Detroit Mayor Sarah Williams held emergency community meetings, pleading publicly for federal intervention to stem the bleeding. "Detroit is again on the brink," she warned. "If immediate action isn't taken, we risk losing everything we've rebuilt in the past decade." Community leaders echoed her sentiments, describing scenes of economic desperation not witnessed in years, as food banks overflowed with families who had recently held stable middle-class jobs. Yet, amidst the devastation, foreign automakers quietly positioned themselves strategically, sensing an opportunity in the American market's vulnerability. Asian and European executives began visiting Detroit, scouting shuttered plants for potential acquisition and investment opportunities, capitalizing on Tesla's sudden collapse. While Detroit suffered, Tesla's rivals abroad saw the crisis as an opportunity. International competitors invade. Tesla's crisis opened doors wide for international brands, and they wasted no time. With Tesla paralyzed by internal chaos, European giants such as Volkswagen and Renault swiftly increased their North American operations, announcing new factories in Tennessee and Georgia, promising thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in local investment. Asian brands like BYD and Hyundai followed suit, pledging significant expansions into the void left by Tesla's retreat from the market. Volkswagen CEO Thomas Schaefer confidently stated at a press conference in Atlanta, "We see this as a historic opportunity to redefine the electric vehicle landscape in North America. Our goal is clear: become the dominant EV manufacturer on American soil." Similarly, BYD announced groundbreaking ceremonies for a massive factory in Alabama, directly targeting Tesla's faltering market share with aggressive pricing and advanced technology. These investments energized struggling American communities, temporarily calming fears stirred by Tesla's downturn. However, analysts quickly noted a long-term risk. America's auto industry, once proudly led by domestic giants like Tesla, Ford, and GM, was now becoming heavily dependent on foreign manufacturers. Questions arose about whether America's electric vehicle future was slipping permanently from its control, driven instead by decisions made in Berlin, Beijing, and Seoul. American lawmakers, sensing geopolitical vulnerability, alarms about national security implications, calling for congressional hearings and stricter regulations to protect domestic industries. Yet despite these warnings, international brands pressed forward aggressively, eager to capitalize on Tesla's unprecedented stumble. Local governments, desperate for employment and economic stability, welcomed them enthusiastically, signaling a seismic shift in America's automotive landscape. But the full scale of this global shift would shake economies far beyond autos. So what's your take on this? Let's talk in the comments.